Welcome back, everyone.
Hi.
Okay, today we got a topic. What's your reputation? Right? Like, how do you feel? How do you
I
feel?
feel
Does this,
I feel so excited.
oh, lovely. Me too. As we tend to like outline our
Mhm.
episodes to some degree or another. And this one we started to outline, and then it's like we just wanted to riff on it. Like, oh, yeah, we can talk about this, we can talk about that. And we had to compose ourselves.
Mhm.
So now we can share it with all of you. Because, yeah, this is like a, a lot, it kind of is coming together as we're talking about this topic of just reputation that honestly, I haven't really spent a whole lot of time thinking about. So I'm like really
Yeah.
intrigued where it's going to go.
And I feel like it came up super naturally with us a while ago. I don't
Yes.
remember where the conversation started or where we were at on one of our Monday hour ones, but
Yep.
Jess said something. I don't know if you were working with a client or something, and
Yeah.
just conversation was happening, and I was like, "Oh, it's almost like you're trying to like what do you want your reputation to be?" And
Yes.
then like we just dropped that in the idea dump and it came
Yeah.
up today and we're like, "Oh, let's dive in." So it's kind of
Yes.
like something that came up super naturally.
Mm-hmm.
It's very loaded.
Yes, because I remember when you phrased the question, I think I was kind of wanting to redo some of my offerings and like what my
Mm.
kind of suite or my package
Mhm.
experience looked like. And man, when you asked me that about my reputation, I was like, oh dang, I don't know. I don't know what I want that to look like. But it was so valid. It was very worthy to kind of go through that to see where things were at.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a very big question. It can be very
Sure.
triggering. Like when you hear that, maybe you're feeling like, "Ooh, like
It,
reputation."
yep.
But we are making choices every day to
Hmm.
try to either avoid reputations or uphold reputations.
Oh yeah.
And whether that's,
Yeah.
your brand and business or the way you alter yourself in relationships, like there's so much in our day to day that we're just naturally kind of following this taught concept as we probably learned as children. So, like, we just want to dive into all of it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
See where it goes. We got like lots of topics that we can dive into. Do you want to start with like literally what is reputation?
Yeah. So, we decided to look up the Google definition, and it says reputation is the beliefs or opinions that are generally held about someone or something, which I feel I get that,
Yeah.
but I'm like, it's way more loaded than that
Mm,
because it's so subjective.
so subjective. Entirely subjective.
Yeah, because if you think you're putting yourself out into the world as an amazing podcast host,
Duh.
right? And you're speaking to someone who's never launched a podcast or, doesn't have technical skills or, isn't
Hmm.
comfortable talking on screen or
Yeah.
publicly, they might look at this podcast and be like, wow, it's so good.
Right.
But an expert podcast recorder or someone with, a
Sure.
million downloads, which we are not there yet,
Not yet.
they might listen to this and be like, eh. So
Right.
that reputation is so subjective to who's like the lens that everybody's looking through and the reality that they have.
Yes. Yes. And then your own internal reputation
Mm-hmm.
of yourself.
Oh, yeah.
There's like it's coming from all angles.
Yeah. So let's talk about where this started. I feel like this is always a fun way to get the juices flowing. I immediately think of childhood. I feel like I
Hmm.
heard that word more in my childhood than I do now. And now it's spun under these like more acceptable terms of, brand
Yes, right.
and, just I don't know, there's just kind of a nice like softer tone to it now as an
Mhm.
adult. But I can remember as a kid hearing as a child adults say, "Oh, she has a really bad reputation."
Oh
Or,
yeah.
"Don't
Yes.
get into that crowd. They have a terrible
Uh-huh.
reputation." Like that energy of reputation was scary,
Yeah.
kind of.
It's like don't make the wrong decision. Like it's
Mhm.
going to lead you down this path. But
Mhm.
it is. It's the same things come to mind for me. It's like the crowds you hang with
Mhm.
in childhood, adolescence, um and like the mean girls, like
Mhm.
it's those sorts of, or like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like the groupings in
Yeah.
school. Like I would have been in like the jock side of thing. Like I
Yeah.
was an athlete. Like
Yeah.
A lot of people probably saw me that way. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, that's what you thought. Like, that's what
yeah,
we don't know, but, like, that's what
right.
you thought your reputation might have been based on the
Yes.
people you were around, the things you were doing, the
Right, right.
experiences you were having.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
It's funny, I personally don't believe I was a mean girl, but I hung out with them,
Ooh,
and they will
really?
totally own it,
Yeah, yeah.
you know? But, like, I remember being like, having anxiety, like, I didn't wanna be a mean girl, you know, and, like, I was
Sure.
all but, like, those were also my friends, and, like, you know, mean girl's even subjective, like, the
Oh,
title and the
absolutely.
once you get down to it, everything's subjective, but,
Yes.
yeah, there was these stereotypes that I saw as good and I saw as bad,
Yeah.
and I was taught were good and were taught they were bad just from, you know, my parents,
Yes.
friends, society,
Yes.
and I feel like it was just a way to, I mean, it's develops from childhood, being a young little baby,
Yeah.
trying to find safety in the world,
Right, right,
developing that brain of yours and trying to understand what is safe and what is not safe.
right.
And I think that just really manipulated us when we were coming into our identity and
Mhm.
learning what identities were safe and what identities were not safe.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I completely agree with that.
I mean, and how much did it carry on into adulthood?
I mean,
Like
till right
that's what
now
I
that
mean
we're
by the
talking about it.
That's what I mean, the whole brand, like, and I'm just a creative person, so and I love building brands and stuff. So I think there's like
Yeah.
a brand is like the high expression of reputation, but I kind of feel like we
Mm.
just I don't know. I don't hear that word as much, so it's kind of sugar coated under other things
Mhm.
that and actions that we take now. But
Well,
I know to this
yeah.
day we're still acting like that high school girl trying to avoid certain
Mm.
things and try to be certain things.
Right. And even thinking back, I mean, I'm a little older than you. So like I didn't have a cell phone. Granted, my cell phone was
Always
Snake.
forget
Like
this.
flip. I know. Like I'm
Mm.
like I think I'm 10 years older than you. So there's
No, you're not.
maybe there's a gap for like, you know, I wasn't on instant messenger chat, AOL
Mhm.
chat until my freshman year of college.
Okay. That sounds correct because I was on it in middle school.
I- Cool. Cool.
I
Okay.
love
Yeah.
you. But that's I mean, just our perception of, like, when it started,
Yes.
you're
Because, and
saying.
I'm thinking now, reputation, kind of in my childhood, in my adolescence, it was
Mhm.
very word of mouth, right?
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
very word of mouth. But man, if I was an adolescent now,
Oh my god.
reputation's completely different.
Yeah, it is the, like, the brand you have online, you know,
Like it
how
travels so like cancel
it's
culture wasn't a thing when I was a kid. Like that
yeah,
that was that didn't
I
that
can say
phrase
that as well.
didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Like so that's kind of like spinning in my mind too of like our childhood.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we learned reputation and, you know, the experience or the creation of reputations as children, but it was so much more basic. Like it was the
Yes.
stereotypes, right? It was stereotyping mean girls, I don't know,
Mhm.
geeks, nerds. I mean, we could just think of
Right.
movies that stereotype things as
Right.
well, like
Right.
tryhards, teacher's pet, like those kind of,
Yes.
you know, your reputation could
Perfectionist.
be very, yeah, more easily clumped in society.
Yes. Yes,
Clumped,
yes.
lumped. I think I meant to say lumped,
I think
clumped.
they both work.
um, but now it's so nuanced,
Yeah.
which I feel can be almost paralyzing because you're always
Mhm.
trying to maintain this image
Yes.
that suits so many more people, not just your high
Eh,
school friends,
right.
not just the high school friends' parents,
Yes,
but
right.
also everybody online, everybody who
Ah,
happens to stumble upon your Instagram page or freaking LinkedIn.
yes.
There's so much
Yes.
more pressure to maintain this imaginary reputation.
Right. I mean, there
It's
is.
all ego based.
Yes. Yes, yes. And
All
we're all in it. Like we're
Yeah,
all
we're all doing it. Like
yeah,
there nobody's
yeah.
excused from like I know that there are people, maybe let's say someone who has a defined heart center,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
This center is all about like ego and willpower and wanting to prove yourself in the materialistic world. So
Mhm.
someone who has that defined in their chart, colored in,
Yeah.
they might not feel this like need to reach or prove as much,
Sure.
like consciously in their energy. They don't feel
Yeah.
that consistently. But those of us who, Jess and I, have it completely open,
Yeah.
that could be a reason why we feel like we're always, trying to
Yeah.
understand where we belong or what we need to do or
Sure.
prove.
Sure.
But even those people who have that defined, everybody is, whether on a very small scale or with their whole freaking life, unfortunately, are trying to maintain or avoid a reputation.
Right. And why?
I
Like,
don't know. I mean, I know, but
you're right. Like, it's this whole, like, we just do
I
it.
feel like that was a dramatic why.
And
But
why?
why?
Bum, bum, bum.
But I mean, even the way that we manipulate ourselves when I think about ordering coffee. I go into a coffee
Ooh.
shop and all of a sudden I'm like, "Hi, thank
Oh,
you."
yes.
But,
Yes,
in
yes.
the car, I was like bitching to my mom about something, right? And then I walk into a coffee shop and I'd like a cold
Yes.
coffee, oat milk, please. And I
Right.
mean, there's nothing wrong with those. I mean, that's also just being respectful, but there's like this undertone of when are you doing it and it doesn't feel good or it's not getting you closer to what you want and you're just doing it because it's autopilot to act in a certain way or be a
Yeah.
certain way to get your certain thing.
Right. Oh, man. I feel
How
like
are
that
you
may be
feeling?
more than I think it is.
I know. I'm like, how are you
Ah,
feeling right now, Jess?
ah,
I can feel the shoulders cringing a little.
it's starting. I actually think of, so David, my fiance, he has a defined will and he's a manifester. Does Nick
Hmm.
have a defined will? Do you
No,
know?
his is open,
Oh, okay. This
which
is
is
fun.
fun for us in the
Yeah.
household. But yeah, go ahead.
He's actually who came to mind of like, oh, he doesn't really do this. He
Okay.
doesn't
Yeah.
change.
So
Like if he's in like we're
if
just
he's
hanging
in
out sort of mood.
alignment everywhere else in life and honoring himself and following a strategy
Sure.
and authority, naturally probably doesn't do
Right.
this.
But even if he's like, if we're out, getting coffee and
Hmm.
like whatever, he's tired from the week he's not like, oh, hey, I want that blueberry muffin. And I want
Yeah.
like, where I'm like, oh, hi. Okay. Can we do this? And can we do that? Now
Yeah.
he is pleasant. He's not like
Hmm.
rude to anyone, but I
Hmm.
don't see that like mask. I don't like that
Hmm.
change in character, which is one of
Yeah.
the reasons why I love him so much. Cause I'm like, you are the best mirror for me in
So it's
life.
funny that you're bringing him up because okay, he's a manifester. He also has this
Yes.
emotional authority. So there's like these other
Yes.
when we are talking about human
Yes.
design, there are so many things that play into one
Hmm.
another.
Totally.
So we don't want to just disclose that like or say explicitly that
Right.
if you have an open heart, you don't care about your reputation, or if you have it closed or defined, you do, or back
Sure.
I said that
Yeah.
backwards, but you know what I
It's all
mean.
good.
Um, but I'm thinking about both of our men who are manifestors and emotional authority, and you're using this example, and I'm kind of not as I don't care as much in this scenario. When I go into a restaurant,
Yeah.
I'm very picky about my seat.
Yes.
I like to have a good seat. First of
Yes.
all, it needs to be comfortable. Touch is my digestion.
Hmm. Hmm.
We're not going into that, but those of you listening,
Yep.
you'll know. Um, and then my environment is what's it called? It's visual.
Yeah. It's
It
markets,
has
I think.
well, it's internal markets, but it's
Oh,
my
the tone.
sense is external like vision. I forget what it's not called that.
Oh, outer vision.
Outer vision.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, when I go into a restaurant, I like to be in a good, comfy seat so I can digest my
Yes.
food and an environment. I like to see everything. Like I don't
Yes.
want to be facing the wall, right?
Yep.
Or I don't want to be
Yep.
out in the corner by the bathroom. Like I don't, it's
Yeah.
just the thing. It helps me eat better and experience things better.
Yeah.
And so, but I've always just known this intuitively. And so I always
Sure.
walk in and I'm like, can I have a booth? And then if it's super empty, I'll be like, can we sit over there?
Right.
And this makes Nick cringe.
Ah!
He gets so cringy. Like, and Nick is like David in a lot of ways, the manifester aspect,
Right.
kind of do what he wants. He usually doesn't care about things, but
Sure.
this is the one point where I don't care and he cares
Yeah.
in the sense of he doesn't want to ruffle any feathers. He doesn't want to be seen
Oh,
as
interesting.
someone who inconveniences others, like the hostess.
Yeah.
And I just find that so funny because I think that's that difference is that open heart and defined heart
Yes. Yes.
between them two.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's just
Cool.
an interesting,
Mhm.
Yeah, thinking just that simple example of coffee
Yeah.
shop, like, oh
And this
yeah,
just,
I
yeah,
always
and it
perk
goes to
up.
show that it comes from our conditioning. Like our
Yeah.
desire for reputation or
Yes.
to have a certain reputation just comes from your conditioning and
Yeah.
the beliefs that you were taught were right and wrong
Yes.
as a
Yes, it
child.
is. Yes.
So, okay, where do we want to go with this? I have some questions.
Okay.
So these can be things that we can talk about or you can reflect on within
Yeah.
yourself. You know, maybe you
Yeah.
want to pause this and kind of ask these questions so that like the
Sure.
conversation flows for you, or if you want to save these for later, if you don't want to do them at all, that's cool too.
Yeah.
Um, but I want to talk about this idea of, your reputation is just kind of this mask you're wearing,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And some of them are more influential than others, but I want
Sure.
to kind of bring in this visual of like taking these masks off and starting to look at them and what their reasonings are.
Mhm.
um so I want to ask the question, like, what area are there areas in your life, Jess, that you're still trying to be something?
Yes.
So you're putting like, a mask on.
Right.
What's
Yeah.
coming up for you? And we're exposing ourselves
Oh, yeah.
as we always do,
Uh,
but let's
that's
do
what
it.
we're here for.
Yeah, we're taking the masks off.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like even right now, I'm like, oh gosh, that's too big. Like there's a lot of areas.
Okay.
Um,
Where in relationships do you feel like you are still
yes.
wearing a mask?
Okay. So in my romantic personal relationship, and I'll
Okay.
also say for my like family, but with David, for when I have a mask, I would say it is kind of this similar dynamic that we were just talking about of uh to not rock the emotional wave that
Okay.
his authority has. So I will put the mask on of the people pleasing that is very,
So it's people pleasing.
yes, it is very ingrained
Mm-hmm.
in me for all sorts of reasons. Um, I notice it in that relationship and in others. That's not like just exclusive to him, but that's what like comes up in that dynamic. And then for like family dynamic, like, or parent dynamic, I mean, there's definitely also people pleasing, but it's more from the lens of being the good little girl. Like the not the good little girl. That's not, people are going to think of that differently. It is um that like they've taught me well. They can be proud of me. I can show up
Mm-hmm.
in that
Yeah.
way. Like my reputation is so solid
Yeah.
um from how they raised me. It's that kind of flavor, that how I may phrase things to them, or
Yeah.
reactions, that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
So
Yeah, those are what come
so
up first.
you're feeling the reputation to be a success in their eyes, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
be
and have them be
successful.
proud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Mhm.
I feel like I've been
Yeah.
breaking through that one a lot more because I had that too. Like my thing was
Yeah, me
always
too.
is really resonates with what you're just saying, but I feel like when I was younger, I was always wanting to be joy and happiness for
Sure.
everyone.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Like that was like I felt was my role, to be joyful
Yeah.
and to be just bring joy
Yeah.
everywhere I went.
Yes.
And I feel like
Yes.
the last 4 years I've been like not that, like really deconditioning that reputation, taking
Yeah.
those masks off. But yeah, I
Sure.
resonate with that, I think,
Mhm.
more previously.
Sure. Sure. Yes. I mean, it's definitely like an evolution, right? Like
Mhm.
even to be aware of
Mhm.
what it, it it is, or like in those, like that's
Mhm.
already like such a
Yeah.
big step.
And I think it's important to note that these are kind of more subconscious. Like we're talking, I
Yeah.
mean, you can explicitly ask the question, what do you want your reputation to be? And that's a fun question to answer, but we're kind of like digging deeper of, where subconsciously are we trying to manipulate our reputation?
Yes.
And I think for me, where it still comes up, and maybe these align to I mean, they do align to our energy types, but for
Sure.
me, I'll find myself still trying to prove that I'm working and that I am a hard worker
Mm-hmm.
even though I actually make working easier. That's actually who I am. That's actually what I
Yes.
enjoy doing. That's actually why people like me and
Mhm.
like want
Mhm.
to be around me. But
Yeah.
I'll find myself still trying to, like, even, in business. And at the end of the day, Nick's like, what did you do today? And sometimes I'll still want to hold the reputation of, I did 10 things successfully
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
am tired. When in reality, I did a few things really well in alignment and
Yeah.
I'm well rested, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to maintain this like mirage of hard worker.
Yes. 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 Oh man. I mean, that's like such a journey.
Mhm.
Entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of masks
Mhm.
that come up. I mean, even like I was at a networking event yesterday, and it's a lovely, lovely group of women, super support. Like it's a different group than I've ever been a part of. But you introduce yourself, right? Like,
Oh, I
okay,
hate
tell us
introducing
this.
myself. I hate
Yeah.
that.
Oh, and it's just, you already know you're walking in. There's going to be a lot of entrepreneurs in business and not like it's not exclusive
Mhm.
business owners. So you kind of know, okay, like there could literally be a mix of anyone
Yeah.
in this group. So that like sure makes it helpful. But I mean, I've introduced myself in in the meeting, I don't know, over 12 times probably at this point,
Wow.
and I'm still like, okay, how am I going to say it? Or, ooh, should I maybe say it this way? So then I have like more
Yeah.
credibility and authority and like people
Yeah.
notice me more in here and like, want to come talk to me and get my services. Every meeting that thought goes through
And
my
I
head.
think that's so normal and valid
Mm-hmm.
because we're always judging each other. Like, I think
Right.
it's a
Yes.
very natural human instinct to, and I don't mean judge and like sit there and gossip and talk shit about each
Sure.
other, but we're making judgments. Our mind is always making judgments,
Mm-hmm.
and those judgments are based on our beliefs about who we are and what the world is, and that exchange.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's so valid because I mean, I've been in that situation. I mean, how many times have I changed my website?
Probably a lot.
Yeah, like a lot. First of all, one, I enjoy it. Okay.
You
I
do.
enjoy it. It's a creative
Yes.
expression. I get these urges to just woo.
Yep.
But it's this sense of like, okay, now I'm going to be this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a high expression of that. So we were talking a little bit earlier before we pressed record about, stereotypes.
Yeah.
But then I made this flip on it of, if you're doing it for the right reasons, you can tap into different archetypes to help you get where you want to go.
Absolutely. Yes. And I think that's where it gets all muddied up.
Super muddy.
Yeah. So muddy.
I think the point to make first is, I mean, we're whole, right? I think that's like the through line here, and that's what really we're wanting to get to in this
Yeah.
conversation, is that like we are whole. When we came into this life, we were all of the universe. We had the whole universe within us. There was no, you weren't the good girl, or what
Sure.
you said, the success. You weren't here to make your family proud. I wasn't trying to look hardworking when I was born, right? Like,
Right.
absolutely not. There was none of that. Instead, we were just kind of this blank canvas, and the whole universe existed within us. Um, but then we started to learn that certain things were bad, certain things were good, and we started to tuck parts of ourselves away to create our
Yeah.
shadow.
Yeah.
So, let's say lazy is an example, right? That's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
opposite of hardworking, I would
Mm-hmm.
think. That's the direct opposite. But I started to tuck that away
Right.
into my shadow, into my subconscious, and I became this person of like, I'm not lazy. I would do
Right.
anything to not look lazy.
Right.
Um, and so I forget where I was going with this.
Well, that we were born just perfect beings, and then our
Um,
shadow starts to develop as we start to
Mhm, mhm, but
put
there was a point
away.
after it. This is what happens when I'm, like, channeling thoughts.
I love it.
Um,
We're all here for it.
yeah, but we're basically that we're whole, and
Yes.
we have this shadow within us that we're trying to avoid. I can't remember where I was going with this, so we're just gonna
It'll
laugh it
come
off.
back around. It'll
We're
come
gonna
back
come back
around.
around.
It will. Because
It
it always does.
shadow.
Oh, you definitely
Um,
froze for a moment there too. Okay, we're good. We're back.
We're just glitching.
It's a little universal.
I'm glitching. Our Zoom glitched. We're having a moment with spirit right now that's coming in
Yes,
and
we
just
are.
refocusing us.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I forget what my point was. So
Well, I think what you were getting at is this kind of like up level, right? Like this reputation. It has such a negative connotation to it, right?
yes.
Like
Oh, archetypes. It always comes back,
it
Jess. It
always
always
comes
comes
back.
back. I love
Yes.
when I listen to podcasts and like someone forgets something, right? And the listener's like, oh, I wish I could tell them.
Yes.
I'm sure all of
Yes.
you were like, you were talking about archetypes. Um, so anyways,
Oh.
we started to tuck things away within our identity and really reject parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
But we are literally everything. We are good and bad. We are successful. We are also failures. We are hardworking and lazy. Like we are the black and the white, the both ends of the spectrum and everything in between.
Yep.
And so the sooner that we can really accept this and lean into this and become like start to celebrate those things that we're rejecting, the faster we can use them for our good.
Yeah.
Because we learned that reputation was so bad. We learned that, you can have some reputations and not others. But really, we're everything. And there's such a cool part about tapping into those parts of yourself that you've been rejecting in the past
Oh,
and
yeah.
using them to take you forward.
Yes.
Like the
Yeah.
archetype of like sometimes I want to try on the archetype of the hard worker
Mm.
now that I've even released it. Like there's moments where we
Mhm.
can really try that on and benefit from it, but
Mhm.
it's only after I've accepted that I am everything that I can really do that.
Right. Right. Because then that proving
Mm-hmm.
has
Isn't
dissipated.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's really sitting with what am I still trying to be
Mhm.
first? Who am I trying to be?
Yep.
And then also asking the question, what are you not trying to be?
Right. Ooh. Right. That's a good
Mm.
one.
Yeah. And then once those are all on the table or on your paper, on your journal, right in front of you,
Mhm.
who am I really once all of the
Yep.
masks are off?
Right. Right. And
Like,
that is something that I feel like human design has really grounded me into
mm,
because it can
yeah,
feel really like lost after you're
yeah.
like, oh, I'm digging through all these layers. And you're like, oh, I kind of want like
Yeah.
a guidepost or like, I want
Mm-hmm.
to anchor into something. I feel like for me, at least, human design's been a really
Yeah.
lovely way to have that anchor.
Yeah. It's like
Mhm.
an example that I've dragged out and butchered over the last 5 minutes. But but speaking of hardworking and lazy, when I look at my human design, I can then see that I am meant to work less. I am meant
Yeah.
to make work easier as a projector. I'm not here to output the hardest pieces or work the longest hours. And so that brings me back to like, what is my truth? What is my actual identity?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And I know like one thing we haven't really delved into in this conversation around reputation is when I dramatically was like, and why? Why do we do this? A big part of this as you're like uncovering these layers and kind of getting to the roots, it's likely going to bring you back to you didn't feel safe or there
Mm-hmm.
was some level of safety or you want to stay safe.
Mm-hmm.
Either something around safety and then also I would say around shame. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
felt shame for expressing a certain side of you that didn't fall in line, well then
Mm-hmm.
that's what that light gets dimmed. That's what starts to be hidden. That's when that shadow self kind of invites that part of you
Yeah.
into that experience. But that is something to be like a guiding post as well. If you're like, whoa, this all seems like a bit much, you can also look at it in that lens for either you still feel shame, guilt, or
Mm-hmm.
earlier version of yourself you did, or if there was a real threat, perceived threat of safety. It's likely masks were put on, and that
Mm-hmm.
reputation had more significant meaning.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And to get to the root of that, that was so beautifully said. You can ask yourself, like, where am I still trying to belong? And where
Oh,
am I still
yes.
trying to feel loved?
Oh, that's so good.
And so that will really bring to light the areas of your life, or maybe in the relationships where you're still seeking that. And
Yeah.
then looking at, okay, well, what am I doing to try to get it right now? Like, what am
Mhm.
I doing? What are the actions I'm taking? Who am I being to try to get that love and
Yep.
that acceptance and belonging in those areas of my life? And
Yep.
then those things that you're doing are kind of what's cultivating this false sense of reputation.
Yes. Yes.
Because I mean, there's no true reputation. Like, you're never going to go through life holding one reputation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, as long as like for myself, like as long as I always think of like, okay, like even this like networking and meeting, just to keep
Mhm.
the same example. Like I always kind of think after those sorts of things, like if that was recorded or if there was like audio of it, would I be okay with that? Like if anyone
Mhm.
heard it? It's like that sort of like that's where my
Yeah.
compass it's
Yeah.
me. Like would I be okay with that? Or it's like, oh, actually I said that like one comment to that lady, like, oh God, if they heard that. Ugh. Like those are where I want to
Yeah.
pay attention to in this
Yeah,
current phase of life.
for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm literally so transparently already thinking about having a brain fart on a
I
podcast and
love it though.
thinking, I know, but there's a great example,
Yes, it
right? Of
is.
like,
It is.
okay, similar to what you're saying, you said that thing.
Right.
Okay, I brain farted on the episode today. And I'm
Right.
like, oh, what is that gonna make people think of me? You know, like literally
Right.
my egos, and I
Ooh.
know I don't care, but like at the same time, that's what just ran through my head of like, oh,
Yeah.
shizzle.
Right. My reputation.
My reputation is done for.
Oh my
Nobody's gonna
God.
love me. I'm not gonna belong. But like, it's
Right.
bullshit.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it
Absolute
is.
bullshit. But
Right.
it's funny too. Like, it's funny to become like, aware of where in your life I mean, it's keeping you from what you actually want because you're just on autopilot trying to get something, right? And we were talking about
Right.
failure a little bit before this
Yeah.
episode too. And I know we want to do an episode on that, but
Mhm.
there's some, I think, grace and beauty in like letting go
Mm.
of
Yes, there
trying to
is.
succeed, of not getting the love, of not reaching the status or the thing that you're after,
Mm.
and just like releasing into that.
Mm.
I didn't get it. I don't have that reputation, or I am the opposite. There's some like peace, I think, personally for me in that
Mm.
letting go of what
Oh,
you've been
yeah.
trying to hold on to so much. And in some areas it's bigger and more consuming, and can cause you to really not feel good in life.
Oh, sure. Sure. And that's like the overarching theme, which is probably the overarching theme for literally all of our episodes, is this awareness. Like that's the first step, and that
Mhm.
awareness will evolve um in all sorts of different ways, but like okay, someone wants to like talk negatively about you or they want to leave a
I
negative
thought you were gonna say talk naked.
ooh,
It like
hey,
sounded like that, and I was like, "Oh, great example. You want
spice
to
it
talk
up a little bit.
naked on screen."
Real reputation right there. It's really gonna come out. Oh my gosh. But like if
Oh,
somebody talks negatively or leaves
yeah.
a review that you feel ugh, impacts your reputation, like that's just an opportunity for awareness, right? Like that's
Mhm.
just it's an internal game.
Mhm. That's what it is.
We're all playing it because we don't
Mhm.
I mean, that's what we know.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of power in it as well because then you get to lean in to your real strengths
Mhm.
and play those up, right? Like it is authentic for you. You do have these skills, you have these abilities. So that's what you lean into because that's your truth versus living like in this response of something someone said, how somebody behaved or interacted with you. Like, nope, that's not gonna like
Mhm.
steer you off course. That's just like what a lot of the awareness can give you.
Yeah, once all of the masks are off,
Yeah.
and that's not an overnight thing,
No.
uh, or ever, right?
I
We're
was
always
gonna
gonna
say, yeah.
ever. Yeah, we're always going to have a mask on.
Mhm.
It's just a part of being human. But once you lay them
Yeah.
all on the table, like I said earlier, what's left? Like, that's what you're saying. Like, what's there? And you can play that up. Like, an
Yep.
example of um, Like, I don't think the coffee shop example that I gave at the beginning was necessarily that bad, right? Because I am a
Sure.
personable human being. I do like connecting with people, but as long as it's coming from a place of my heart and my
Yeah,
being and, no mask, and I can play that part of myself up. I can walk into the
absolutely.
coffee shop and maybe put on a smiling face when I didn't have one 2 hours ago. That's not a negative thing. Or maybe even like in a job interview,
Hmm.
if you're, there's nothing wrong with playing up your skills and turning yourself kind of on and up
Yes.
to get to where you desire to be. If that job is really in alignment with all your masks off, if it's really still what you want. But
Yeah.
if you're, putting these masks on blindly every day,
Hmm.
that's where you end up in jobs and experiences that don't feel good. And then you have to
Yeah.
upkeep the reputation that you started.
Yes.
So where are
Yes.
you trying to just upkeep this reputation that you started in your childhood or freaking high school or the first job you had?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're
Yeah.
just on autopilot.
Yeah.
Hmm.
This episode is permission to stop doing that.
Yes.
Because you can
Yeah.
never master a reputation. There's no mastery in reputation.
No, there's no fulfillment in
Mm-mm.
that. You may have
Just
moments. You may have moments of,
like dopamine hits of
yes.
egoic dopamine hits and
Hmm.
joy
Hmm.
there, but it's not sustainable.
No.
Reputations are not sustainable.
Mm-mm.
And nobody taught us that when we were younger.
No, not at all.
Oh, well, I feel like we've rambled on about all different parts of reputation.
Yeah.
Um, but is there anything else we want to dive into before we wrap up today?
Mm, I don't think so. I mean, I know for myself, the like bigger takeaway is like, what am I trying not to
Ooh, the
be?
not one. Yeah. Because that's
Yeah,
that's
like,
the shadow. That's where the
right,
shadow is. That's where you're rejecting. Like, I am not that.
right. Or like, that's not worthy of
Mm-hmm.
it being shown, being expressed, or
Mm-hmm.
something's wrong with it. Like, I haven't thought about that. That one I'm gonna
And I think that's
keep
that
cozy.
shadow work, shadow exploration can in our industry it can feel so heavy.
Oh, sure it can.
Um, and I think it's because we keep making it heavier and heavier the more we talk about
Yes.
it. Like, I don't think it's being shadow work can be um in the light. You know what I mean? Like, the
Yeah.
actual act of doing shadow work and looking at your shadow can be from a place of light and love. So it doesn't have
Yes.
to feel heavy. And that's something I always really emphasize with my clients, that like this can be actually really fun. Where
Yeah.
can you laugh about where you were being the thing that you were really trying hard not to be?
Yes.
And like just laugh about it.
Right. It can be so freeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Letting go.
Yeah. What about for you? Any other aspects coming
Um,
up?
I think mine's more, what am I trying to be? The opposite question. The first
Cool.
question of like, where am I still trying to be something?
Yeah.
Because I've really leaned into my shadow and knowing that I am it all. Um, like, I know I'm manipulative, I'm a
Mm.
smartass, I'm a know-it-all. Like, I know I'm all the
Sure.
negative connotations of everything, and like I fully accept that. I mean, probably in moments I am not as accepting, but I know
Sure.
that that
Sure.
awareness is very much there. But
Yeah.
there's still a sense of me, okay, I take all the masks off and I'm sitting here. I think there's ones where I'm still grabbing them to like
Yeah.
get somewhere.
Yep.
The hardworking, like I'm still like, oh, let me just put that mask on
Right. Right.
to just try to trick myself in the world that like I can get to
Sure.
that place.
Sure.
Instead, now what I was saying about archetypes is I think I look at that mask and say, how do I turn that into an archetype, into an energy that I can use to benefit
Mm.
me? I can be
Mm-hmm.
hardworking for a couple days, but I don't need to wear a mask of a hardworking identity. There's like
Right.
a real big difference between, trying to be a stereotype or using an archetype energy. So that's where
Oh,
I'm at. I
that's
think I
good.
still sometimes grab ones that aren't um great, that aren't really in
Sure.
alignment, that aren't truly me.
Sure. It's like to fast track, right? It's like,
Yes.
oh, I'll
Yeah.
do it this way, and that'll be
Yeah.
fine.
And that's still just like I think projector conditioning.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely.
And our life theme, which we've never gotten into, but our incarnation cross is very similar, mine and Jess's. And this is
Yeah.
really your life theme. And mine is really based in stillness. So I'm
Hmm.
really meant to move slower. So I know that this is all conditioning, this
Yeah.
wanting to be something or holding up this reputation that I'm meant to release.
Yeah. Yeah. And mine's kind of the opposite. I mean, we have the same energies, but for life themes,
Yeah.
mine's more like vitality and joy.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about joy. We'll talk about that in a
Yeah.
podcast because there's whole layers there that
The
I
hardship of trying to be joyful,
yes.
that we've
Yes.
maybe like allowed ourselves to encounter throughout our
Right.
life. Like I feel like that's a really fun thing to explore.
Yeah. Yeah, we will. We'll absolutely explore that.
But
But yeah,
yeah,
I would
just
I would love to know from, everyone listening, like, does this resonate? Does this connect? Have you ever thought about reputation? Is it autopilot? Do you maybe give it a different name or, like just kind of where this lands for you? Because I know it's an area I hadn't really thought about much, but it's been a
yeah.
really interesting conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to know what area of life you're still trying to hold a reputation up. Like is it more work for you? Is it more relationships?
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
yeah, is it in your physical abilities or physically? We didn't even talk about that,
Right.
but
No, we
trying to
didn't.
dang, that's a whole,
It
you know.
is. It is.
Maybe
It's a
if
big
that's
one.
you, tune into the episode around the language of your body, but like
Yeah.
where are you still trying to maintain a reputation in your life? I'd love to hear.
Yes.
I'd love to
Yes.
hear where.
You can let us know though. Give us all
Mhm.
that info on our Instagram. It's at While You Wait Podcast. You can DM us, you can comment. Like we would just love to hear from you. You guys can always leave a review as well. We get so excited when we get one. We're like, oh, here's another
Yeah,
one.
we text
Yay.
them to each other and
We
we're
do.
like super pumped. Like I think we're up to 5 Apple reviews.
Oh my goodness. Look at us
Woo!
go.
Look out, people.
So you can be our sixth.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love it. But yes, we so
Oh,
appreciate everyone listening. And we appreciate the reviews. And, we'll just be back next week with who knows what topic, but it's going to be so good.
we're just growing our reputation as we go.
Dang it. Ah, we're working on it.
Oh, all right. Well, we hope you have a beautiful day, everyone.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye.